You're watching World News Today with me, Zainab Badawi. Now, within the last half hour, a report into the crisis surrounding the BBC has concluded that the corporation failed to complete basic journalistic checks before broadcasting an investigative report on Newsnight, which wrongly suggested that a leading British Conservative politician was a child abuser. The report added that there was confusion over who had ultimate responsibility for final editorial sign-off. In the ensuing saga, the BBC Director General, George Entwistle, resigned, and the BBC is now being run by acting Director General Tim Davie. Today, Tim Davie repeatedly pledged that he had got a grip. So if you're in charge of a major organisation like the BBC, how do you go about regaining control when you're in the midst of such a crisis? Well, with me now is Chris Roebuck, who is a visiting professor at Cass Business School here in London. Chris Roebuck. So BBC is about, what, 25,000 people in total. Yes. So that makes it quite a big organisation, doesn't it, really?
In terms of UK, yes. In terms of globally, not necessarily. For example, HSBC is more than 10 times that.
Right, OK, but then is it, I mean, do you think that at the moment that it is pretty rudderless, that really there's no real leadership or hasn't been any real leadership to speak of, and that's what gave rise to all that's gone on?
One of the problems here is that organisations get hit by problems, and what tends to happen is they tend to get hit by a number of problems quickly, one after the other. In terms of this getting the grip phrase that we've heard all day, what that is about is effectively saying, right, we need to get clarity out of the confusion that exists, be that confusion about what the organisation is going to do or confusion as to what happens. It's about building confidence back up in the organisation, and it's about injecting clarity in the organisation and outside to say, hang on a minute, this organisation has been here for a long time, it does a lot of good work, and you cannot say that the whole organisation has gone to pieces because a few people made a mistake. There are thousands of people in the BBC who do a good job professionally, and just because a few make a mistake, that's what happens in organisations.
But what do you think the customer, as it were, would think, now that they know that there has been this sloppy journalism and that this report went out and it never should have? Will they begin to think, oh, we can't trust what that BBC says anymore? Or will they say, well, it was just a couple of bad cases, that was all?
These organisational issues always crop up. In car factories, sometimes the cars aren't made perfectly. So what happens is people make mistakes. That's life. What you have to do is you have to make sure that you learn from those mistakes. But also the issue here is that with all the changes in the BBC and the movement of people into different roles and all the rest of those issues, it's created an element of lack of clarity about who reports to who on what. And as soon as you start getting a little bit of confusion about who's ultimately responsible and the reporting lines, then things start falling between two stools and confusion creeps in.
So if you're advising the BBC, I mean, I think everybody now says that they have lost a bit of trust. The brand, the global brand, has been damaged a bit. I mean, is credibility very difficult to restore once it's been tainted or once it's even been lost a bit?
The brand is critical, but it depends how good the brand is. If the brand is really, really powerful and strong, what it will tolerate is a few knocks. If the brand is questionable and things go wrong, it confirms people's worst suspicions.
I hope we're the former. You're not going to write us up and say the latter, are you?
The BBC is definitely a key brand, and it's a global brand as well. And to be perfectly blunt, in terms of some of these discussions and journalisms, the man on the street, as far as the man on the street is concerned, as long as Strictly Come Dancing and the football gets broadcast on Saturday, some of the editorial issues around the BBC really aren't going to matter to them.
But globally, people do listen to BBC World Service Radio, and often it's the source of information for people wanting to find out about what's going on.
Absolutely.
So for that global audience, how do you think the BBC should go about trying to restore the trust of anybody who's had that trust damaged?
I would say, and travelling the world on business and advising people around the world, talking to people about what the BBC means globally as opposed to UK, the BBC means hearing the truth globally. And I think that's a different brand, and that is so powerful that people know that if they are in Syria or they've had the earthquake in Myanmar or whatever, when they listen to the BBC, they know that that is the truth. And that brand, I think, is so powerful that what could be described as a little local difficulty in UK is not really going to affect that.
Chris Roebuck, you bring us good news here on BBC Global News.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much indeed. Thank you.